Hi, Brass Methods class. It's Mark Fox, and I hope that you are doing well, that you are healthy and safe and enjoying being wherever you are. I hope everyone has read chapter 8 in the Bailey book about the trombone, and I hope everyone's laid their hands on a trombone in one way or another. Please tell me if you're having any trouble getting your hands on a trombone. We want to help you out and get you through this course as easy and so forth as we possibly can. Please don't feel you have to buy a trombone or anything. For goodness sake, you don't have to. But let me know if you're having any trouble getting one. So, the trombone. This is a tenor trombone. Almost all trombones are tenor trombones, except for the bass trombone. There is an alto trombone. You're not going to run across that. You don't have to worry about that. We'll talk a little more about bass trombone in a minute. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights, and especially from a teacher's point of view, things that you should do. This is my mom's trombone. It's very old. It's very icky, but it will do the job. So the tenor trombone is a cylindrical instrument like a trumpet, produces a brighter sound than the more conical or mellow instruments like horn or euphonium. It's pitched in B flat. Now, of course, a trumpet is naturally pitched in B flat, but it's transposing and it calls a B flat a C. This instrument calls a B flat a B flat. You don't have to transpose. That's the cool part. Same with euphonium, and it has a cup-shaped mouthpiece. The interesting thing is this slide, the telescoping slide. That's what makes it so unique. And the good thing about that is that it gives you the opportunity for really perfect intonation, because you can adjust really easily without having to lip up or down or kick things out like you do on the valved instruments. Of course, the downfall is you probably can't finger as fast or change notes as quickly with a trombone moving the slide as you can with a valved instrument. The bass trombone is actually just a bigger bored, bigger belled tenor trombone. It's in the same key and everything else. Having said that, the alterations of the larger bell and larger bore and so forth darken the timbre of the instrument, and it helps in producing the lower notes. And this, of course, comes in handy for like fourth trombone in a jazz band is usually a bass trombone. It really helps out for the low instruments and so forth. And usually there's a bass trombone in orchestral literature and so forth. It's really not considered a doubling instrument, though, because it just feels so different. The skills are a little different skill set, and so it's usually a specialist that plays bass trombone, and it's not something that tenors and go back and forth a lot. I thought that was interesting. Student qualifications. Well, obviously, it's really not that big. Some people get, well, you have to have really long arms. Well, you know what? You can't tell in 5th or 6th grade anyway. Their arms will get long enough. It's not really a big consideration. You're not going to use 7th position a whole lot for a long time anyway. So don't think about the physical problems there. Think more of you need an ear because of this idea of adjusting the slide to get in tune. You got to have some sense of being able to do that, to discern when pitches match and so forth. Assembling the trombone is the only brass instrument that you have to actually assemble beyond just a mouthpiece. And this one doesn't have the usual thing. But you'll notice you want it just a little less than 90 degrees here, right? That's 90 degrees, sure. And not hitting up against this, but usually about it, I don't know, a couple fingers, maybe an inch there. All right. Left hand, one finger on top, and these three curled around, and the thumb back here adding stability like that. The instrument is held entirely with the left hand. The right hand should not carry any weight. Should be free to move the slide. All right? 2 fingers and a thumb. And this is what your students are going to screw up. They're going to grab it like this. I guarantee you. They will grab it like this, and you have to constantly stay on them early to keep this going. So it's very natural feel, but it's a little weird at first, but it becomes a very natural and easy way of doing it. So watch that right hand position. You can read more technically about all this stuff in your book. I'm just, again, trying to hit highlights. Same idea, sit up straight, elongated spine, and bring the instrument to the mouth, not this. Sometimes working with music stands hard. A lot of trombone players play like this, down into the ground. Don't let them. Hold it up a little. If that means raising the stand or even playing off the side of the stand, kind of like this, is better than bonking the slide on to this. I should have mentioned, by the way, in assembly, the lock. Make sure they never leave this unlocked. You will probably see at some point a slide goes sliding across the room because someone's forgotten, and that's an issue, and you got to be careful about that, because even the slightest damage to this slide will create friction and cause a problem and make this really hard to use. Okay. Embouchure specifics, very similar. I thought it was interesting. They suggest starting 50-50 top to bottom, but if they go a little either way, that's okay. I thought that was an interesting perspective. I kind of thought it was 2/3, 1/3, but maybe it has to do with being an overbite or an underbite. So again, the book suggests start with the mouthpiece approximately half each, and of course pretty centered as well, this way. There's a really good 1 through 6 steps of forming the embouchure. Lips together, jaw drops comfortably down, slightly out, chin is flat, muscles around the lips form a slight cushion. I like that idea. For the mouthpiece rim to rest on. The corners are firm, not pulled back in a smile, and avoid excess pressure. That's there on page 69. You can read through that, and that, of course, makes sense. The oral cavity should be as large as possible, and the tongue should be low and relaxed and out of the way. All right. It's interesting that the trombone author of this book was okay with lip buzzing, a little more so than the trumpet person. And quite frankly, I think it's probably more important to have a good lip buzz if you're playing a high brass instrument than a low brass, but nevertheless, I think it can be beneficial. I recommend it. I didn't do a ton of it, but I did, we started with a few buzzes every day. Obviously, a trumpet buzz is more like this, and a trombone buzz is probably more like that. But nevertheless, doing a little free buzzing, I think, is a good idea. Also talks about mouthpiece buzzing, and that's a good idea. It's certainly a different feel. Obviously, I'm a high brass player, but I can make it work. All right. Watch for puffy cheeks. Don't let it happen. And that's another reason to do some buzzing without the mouthpiece, or without the horn, I should say, either free buzzing or just the mouthpiece, because again, you can't really puff your cheeks when you're buzzing. So that's a good way to kind of avoid that. Basic articulation, they're saying, again, they said something a little different. The tip generally touching the back of the upper teeth. That's not actually where I say do or to. I say that on the gum. I don't let it touch the teeth. I've never seen this. I'm not sure I agree with it. I'm scared of saying touches the teeth. You certainly don't want them between the teeth, as with any brass instrument. Maybe there's a little more leeway here, though, than I've recognized in the past. But I would say, again, where you say to or do, if it's a little more legato. And so that's my recommendation there. But then you have the slurred or legato playing, which you can't have valves do it. And so you have to learn a lighter articulation for notes that are slurred, called the legato style. And they suggest like an N sound, no, no, no. Or I've heard loo, 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 an L sound. But, if a normal articulation is... Let me see if I can do that a little more legato now with a loo attack after the first one. Now, of course, I'm not very good, so you heard a little gliss, and that's what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to line up moving the slide quickly enough and tonguing it that exact moment that you're moving it, so you don't get that little gliss or portamento that, of course, trombones are capable of as a special effect, but you don't usually want that. Some things to keep in mind, and I'm on the bottom of 71 now. Keep the continuous airflow. We get so worried about what we're saying with the tongue that we forget the main thing is to keep the air moving between notes. The slide must move very quickly. Having said that, the kids will move jerky like this, and that's not what you want. Again, keep the wrist sort of flexible, and you can move pretty fast without being jerky about it. Try to get them to do it more with the wrist and less with the entire arm like this. It shouldn't look that uncomfortable. The slide should move move smoothly without being jerky. Light articulation can be used. It's not always necessary to use the soft articulation when changing partials. And that's true. You still can do lip slurs between partials as you would on any trumpet or euphonium or any other instrument. All right. you're trying to avoid the smears. I've said that. If that happens, the slide probably needs to move a little more quickly and a little more in rhythm with your tonguing, and that's true. You're trying to coordinate this, and it doesn't happen all at once with 5th and 6th graders, obviously. All right, the breathing section, I think, is really similar to the other instruments. I'll let you read that. That's on 72. The idea of getting the good kind of first notes at the top of 73 are good. You can read through that 1 through 7. I think those are all good ideas. It suggests start the first note in the mid-range by saying toe. Toe. I don't know if that's any different than tu or ta, but you get the idea. But the main articulation being more of a T, not real hard, not like an accent, but a kind of more of a T. And then again, for slurring, more of a soft D or an L or even an N to create that kind of smoother idea. Okay, intonation. Again, we could talk later about getting adjusting the slide position a little. For example, A's and E's are short second, high D flat is longer second. Don't worry about that in 5th and 6th grade. Teach the positions correctly, teach them to play the good sound, and then as they get a little older, we'll talk a little bit more about fixing the intonation. Of course, the only thing you can really tune is F and B flat here at the main slide, and you should try to do that, but everything else is going to be dependent on using the ear, and getting a good sound, which take a little time to develop. So don't obsess about that in the first few weeks of 5th or 6th grade band. Okay. Never teach a student to touch the bell with a finger. Okay, to help find a position. I've seen that. Like here's 4th and you stick your thumb out. No, don't do that. They're all the same. They're all found the same way. All right. 1st, 2nd is about 1 inch of silver showing. Teach them kind of short 2nd because they're going to be playing A's and E's first. They're all going to play it out too far, by the way. 2nd is the worst position. 3rd, pretty much even, right? With this right here, you can see pretty even. 4th, almost even with this, a little further than the edge of this. I'm sorry, I'm not using the right terminology. 4th, then 5th, 6th, 7th. You're not going to get to 7th for quite some time. You will need 6th for C. I have a question from the cameraman. Yes, Rachel.
For 3rd position, I, as a new trombone student, always reached out my finger to see is that cheating? Is that probably,
I don't recommend it.
Probably a bad idea.
It's probably a bad idea.
Your students are probably going to want to do
That's a great question. I don't think it's necessary. I think you can see visually, and pretty soon, obviously, it becomes muscle memory, and that's what you're trying to teach. And it's, you're using the first few notes in the book, and which is going to be F, E flat, D. The problem's going to be C, and that's kind of probably as far as they can reach at 5th or 6th grade. Is going to be 6th position. All right, I need to keep moving here. Okay. There's a tendency to stop the sound of a note so that the slide can be moved from one note to another without the glissando or smear. That's true, but you got to work to avoid that. All right. It will become important later to learn alternate positions because you want to keep the slide moving smoothly in and out without a lot of jerkiness like this. And by using some alternate positions, especially in the high range, you can really smooth out this process. For example, high D is 1st, but it's also 4th. And if you're going from C, D, it's a lot easier to go 3-4 than 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, and so forth. Vibrato, I was interested to see that they really do advocate jaw vibrato the most ahead of slide vibrato, which of course is possible on a trombone and no other instrument. And yet that's used more in the jazz setting, that kind of vibrato. I've certainly seen Von Wieser do it and some of the other jazz players. But they suggest more of the jaw, the whoa, whoa, whoa type moving of the jaw slightly to create good vibrato. As far as trombones, all your beginners are going to start with these little pea shooters, I call them, the small bore instruments, smaller bell, smaller bore, and that's okay. But you really hope by high school that they move up to, first of all, a bigger bore to get a more symphonic sound. And the small ones are still okay for jazz, really, but even so, the tones can be very bright on these smaller bore ones, And and if you're in a good high school band, you want your kids playing a large bore instrument and probably with an F attachment. The F attachment is like a double horn, adds a new partial series, I believe low F. And what it does is really help, like notes like low C don't have to be in sixth. They can actually be in, I believe, first with the thumb trigger. And I got to work more with that because I've never done that. But nevertheless, a large bore trombone is what you kind of hope to get to for symphonic and even marching band playing. I prefer it as far as just getting a good sound. It takes a little more air to fill it up, but by high school, they're probably doing that. All right, you can read through some of the recommended one. The one I always heard, the gold standard for large bore big trombone is the Con 88H. Very well known. I know Dr. Zuger's a Getzen guy, and I think they make some excellent horns. Bach makes some good ones. Yamaha makes some good ones as well. You can read about that in the book. I think for now that's enough to get you going. I hope you can be self-guided through the Essential Elements book. Get yourself going. I ask you if you can. I think it was number 18, Go Talent Roadie. If you can make a recording of yourself and send it to me this weekend. It's not for a grade. It's not for pressure. It's just so I can look at what you're doing. Maybe I'll see something that can help you. One more thing that just came to mind. Beginners play like this. Tell them to get their elbows out a little bit. And you should too. Should be very free and relaxed. All right? There you go, guys. It's a start. I hope I did okay. I'll follow up with some more stuff later. I hope you're all doing well. Let me know if you need anything. All right. Thanks so much.
Raja, psst. Raja, look at the camera.